Hello, everyone, and welcome to FAIR's free monthly webinar series. My name is Carrie Mulkowski, National Programs Manager at FAIR, and your moderator for today's presentation. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This presentation will be recorded and posted on the FAIR website in about 7 to 10 days. Please note that for maintaining a quality recording, all attendees will be muted throughout the webinar. If time permits, we will respond to some moderated questions for our presenters at the end of the webinar, which you may submit throughout the broadcast. Because attendees will be muted, we ask that you please submit these via our questions feature in your GoToWebinar panel. For those of you on Twitter, we encourage you to join us in conversation during the broadcast. You can follow along with our webinar live tweets at our handle @FoodAllergy or #FairWebinar. Today's webinar is part of FAIR's Back to School Safely campaign, which offers a variety of helpful resources and materials to help you or your child have a safer experience at school. The resources on our Back to School Safely page are many of our most requested materials for heading back to school. You'll find links to free downloads, posters, guidelines, webinars, tips, and more. A special thanks to Enjoy Life Foods, Skeeter Nut Free, and Vermont Nut Free Chocolates for supporting our Back to School Safely campaign. All of FAIR's resources and education programs, including our free webinars, are made possible through community support. If you'd like to make a tax-deductible gift or become a FAIR member to advance our mission efforts, you can do so at foodallergy.org/donate. I'm really excited to introduce today's presenters. Dr. Lori Bein is the Superintendent of Arlington Heights School District 25. Located in northwest suburb of Chicago, Illinois, District 25 is an early childhood to 8th grade district serving 5,500 students in 9 schools. Dr. Bein has also served as a middle school teacher, an assistant principal, a principal, and an assistant superintendent in various suburban Chicago school districts, and has also taught graduate courses for Loyola University Chicago and Roosevelt University. Dr. Bein has been an educator for 25 years. She and her husband David have 3 teenage children. We also have Ms. Ginny Hiltz. She is a principal at Greenbrier Elementary School in Northbrook, Illinois. Previously, she served as the assistant principal and student services coordinator for Windsor School in Arlington Heights. Windsor School houses 2 special education instructional programs serving approximately 50 students from around the districts who have a variety of educational needs. Ms. Hiltz has also served as a 2nd grade teacher, library media specialist, and differentiation specialist at another suburban district, and as assistant director and director at an urban charter school. She is passionate about education and is currently completing her doctoral dissertation through Michigan State University's Educational Psychology and Educational Technology PhD program. She has a 3-year-old son who was diagnosed with a food allergy and asthma at the age of 9 months and who is a happy, active preschooler. We also have Eric Larson. Eric currently serves as the principal of Patton Elementary School, which is part of School District 25, also in Arlington Heights. Patton Elementary School is home to 450 students from kindergarten through 5th grade. Eric has been working in education for 13 years and has served as a middle school math teacher, middle school assistant principal, and elementary principal. Eric and his wife Cody have 2 happy, healthy children, one of whom was diagnosed with food allergies at a very young age. At this time, I'll turn the presentation over to them.
Good afternoon. Again, we're going to talk today about our district's journey as we learned how to educate a whole community about food allergies. You've learned who we are, so we'll go ahead and get started. So why are we here today? Well, we're here because we had a student who had an anaphylactic reaction during school. And her parents then very appropriately reached out and said, can we do more to keep our children safe? And we'd like to thank her parents. They've put together a video today that we can share with you.
Sometimes things are always the way they've been, and that doesn't mean that's how they have to stay. Hi, my name is Melissa Teicher, and this is my daughter, Lucca. She goes to Olive Elementary School in Arlington Heights, Illinois. We're here today to hear our story about what happened to Lucca a year ago, March of 2015, when she had an anaphylactic reaction at school. It was very severe. Lucca is extremely allergic to peanuts. Shortly after eating in the lunchroom, she was outside playing and just had contact with someone else's skin that had peanut oil on it, and she went into a life-threatening anaphylactic reaction. She ran inside. The nurse noticed immediately just by looking at her that she was in anaphylactic shock. She administered an EpiPen, she called 911, and she called my husband and myself at work. I can tell you that receiving that call was a nightmare. Hearing that Lucca was in an ambulance, had been given an EpiPen, and they weren't really sure what was going to happen next. It's a call that no parent wants to get. The doctors came in, they let us know that it was extremely severe. They did feel it was from some type of cross-contamination at school, knowing that Lucca never eats peanuts herself. Her doctor did recommend that she attend a peanut-free school, and that kind of made us realize we need to be the voice. We need to do something here. I think for Lucca to return to school, it was terrifying for her. She was going back to a place that should be safe and isn't. She had mental and emotional stress. Immediately after this happened, I presented to the school board our plea to have the district, or at least Olive School, go peanut-free. And it was well received. Not that evening, but the days following. Dr. Bein, our superintendent, was fantastic. She immediately put an email out asking for an allergy committee of any parents throughout the district that were interested in joining. That committee developed very quickly. We started meeting on a monthly basis, talking about what can we do to educate our community and keep our kids safe. We were really impressed by that, and we felt like immediately we were moving forward in the right direction. Like Halloween, they decided to go without passing out treats, and that also came with some resistance from parents that wanted treats brought in. But overall, treats are not to come into the classroom. The students do get a snack every day, and it has to be a fruit or vegetable in its natural skin, which is great. Kids don't really eat in classrooms. Lucca also eats at her own table at school, and that's actually something that we don't want to see, and obviously wouldn't have to happen if the school were not free. So as happy as we are with the committee forming and awareness has been started, my husband and I and our family, we feel that it's a long road ahead of us. We still want to push for a ban for peanut-free schools. We feel that it costs nothing and it saves lives. We want forced parent education. We don't want optional nights that parents can come to, because the parents that need to hear it don't come. We want everybody to know how severe these life-threatening allergies are. We want consistency. A video was shown at curriculum night. It was short. It wasn't shown consistently classroom to classroom. It wasn't shown consistently throughout the district. So we want everybody on board to the same extent. We don't want to be told that policy and procedure is in place, because those words mean very little when we're not seeing the action that's happening at schools. We want to know that staff are thoroughly trained. We want to know that they know the signs and symptoms. Do they know that dots around the mouth, itchy hands and feet mean that that child is having an anaphylactic reaction? We know that we may not go peanut-free, but if we don't go completely peanut-free, we know that we can get so much closer to a safe place for kids like Lucca with these life-threatening allergies. We know districts have banned peanuts completely. Unfortunately, districts that have done it have seen a student die. We don't want that to happen in Arlington Heights. We want to say we were proactive and we put these policies in place, and we ban peanuts because they don't need to be there. When I have spoken with teachers of other districts, and my advice to them is just think about what you want in your school. What kind of environment? What do you want kids coming feeling at your school? And certainly fear isn't one of those words.
So again, my thanks to the Teicher family for putting that video together, so you have a little bit of background about their perspective and what they approached the district asking. So let me tell you where we were before Lucca had her reaction. We are a school district of 9 schools. We have among our 5,500 students over 200 emergency care plans related to food allergies. We already had in place the policies and procedures that are needed to address student needs and to make sure that emergency care plans are available for them. That work was done by a committee of staff and parents and medical experts several years ago. We also have already had required staff training that occurs every year to train our staffs about the signs and symptoms and responses for food allergies. We also had a lot of activities and communication in place for our families who have students with food allergies and for staff. But when we looked at things and we looked at everybody else in our school, the rest of our students, staff who don't work with children who maybe have a food allergy in their classroom, and for the rest of our community, we started to realize there we had a gap. And we wanted everyone to be a part of understanding what our children are experiencing. In fact, in our food allergy management guidelines, you'll see in our second paragraph that we've included protecting students with life-threatening allergies is the shared responsibility of families, schools, and the community. That's been in our plan all along, and yet we realize we really haven't been providing enough information for the community. We were missing that piece that we had spelled out as important in our plan. So why did our journey change? We had all of these great things in place, and then as you heard from Melissa, her daughter had allergic reaction. And while everything was done correctly to follow Lucca's emergency management plan, and the family was very thankful for the reaction of the staff, we did decide we needed to do more. So I want to share with you what the family's reaction was, how our community reacted to this issue, and even how the press locally, we heard from National Public Radio, and out-of-state press reached out and how they reacted after Lucca had her reaction here in Arlington Heights. So again, as Melissa shared, Lucca had a reaction at recess. She did have an emergency management plan in place. That plan was followed, and Lucca was transported to the hospital and fortunately survived a very scary situation. As I heard about that, of course, we don't ever want any student to feel ill or any family to feel scared. So I wanted to look at what we're doing for children with food allergies. And then again, as Melissa mentioned, she came to a Board of Education meeting, and she did a beautiful plea asking the board to support and to think about what else we could do for kids. I'll also share with you today, again, our community's response. There was some very good response, some not so good response, and some very surprisingly hurtful responses. As the Teichers came to the board meeting, they were very professional and yet determined. They provided an articulate speech to the school board. They expressed being thankful for the Olive Mary Stitt staff, but said that this responsibility should not be put on their shoulders, that we should have more supports in a system that keeps this from happening. They expressed that they were committed to partnering to be a part of the solution and yet determined to see changes happen within our school district. We had a surprising amount of response from press, some positive, some questionable, and some surprising. Our local newspaper is a very read newspaper in our community. It had real positive responses, both in meeting with the Teichers and sharing their story, expressions to the community that we should all be a part of caring for all kids, and even adding an editorial that they appreciated that the school district was open to conversations about what else we could do, and they encouraged everyone to be a part of those conversations. It spread to the greater Chicagoland area, where they did some newscasts on TV and on their online programs talking about food allergies in kids and reopening the conversation about how all of us can be educated and put our arms around children to make them feel safe at school. I was even interviewed by National Public Radio as the information spread throughout the country. We also saw lots of out-of-state newspapers and even a Wisconsin radio station that was doing some press on our situation in District 25. I was really curious on how they became aware. The Wisconsin radio station had many community members from there calling in about this topic, and I learned that they had lost an 18-year-old young man in the last year to a reaction from a food allergy. And it helped me understand how even a year later that whole community was still really grieving and reeling and trying to figure out what they could have done to help this young man survive. A surprising response I saw were some online programs, one online press called Raw Story. They really did a very hurtful podcast, blaming the family, blaming the child, and blaming a school for even trying to get involved. And I was surprised at that hurtful response, but also made me realize that it's important for us to get the facts and figures out, as the Raw Story program really had a lot of misperceptions they were advertising to their listeners. We had some great support from the family's friends reaching out saying, we didn't even know that she had a food allergy. Our children will do all they can to support your child. How can we help? We had an additional speaker come to a board meeting and say, please do listen to this family's pleas. Help us keep our children safe. And most amazing was the incredibly positive voice from our school district nurses. They have such an amazing amount of expertise and an amazing amount of care for our children. And they really spoke up and said, we want to help be a part of the long-time solution. We did, of course, receive dozens of letters and emails and calls from people with an opposite view. You may remember the Teichers were advocating for a peanut-free school district. So lots of people were writing and calling saying, we don't agree with that. We don't want a peanut-free district. And sadly, we did have a handful of very hurtful, pointed letters and calls to the school board and to the superintendent, again, blaming the family or the child or anyone because they had misinformation and didn't have all of the facts. So here's what we did. We formed that committee to get together. We started advertising with some of the fair resources to our kids in our communities. And we started a conversation with our students and with our adults to see what we could do. The Allergy Committee continues today and really is an amazing group of people. Over 100 people instantly signed up to be a part of that committee. That included parents, staff members, some students, and some people from our community. About 35 to 40 people showed up regularly as we met each month to figure out what we could do. One of the surprising things we learned at our very first Allergy Committee meeting is that even among families and staff who have children who suffer from food allergies, we had very different beliefs about what should be done. Some families wanted to see a peanut ban across the school district. Other families at the same table said, no, that's not what I want for my child. I want my child to learn to live in the environment in which they live in school and out in their community. And we also had members who said, let's remember this isn't just about peanuts. There are other life-threatening food allergies that our children suffer from. We need to think of all of those kids. But there was a few things we could agree on as a committee. Number one, we could agree that we are an education institution. That's what we do. And that we could together educate everybody within our community, further educate our teachers, our students, and even beyond our school walls about what it's like to live with a food allergy. We all agreed that we live in a very caring community. Everyone on that committee talked about how wonderful their neighbors were, how caring their teachers were. And we realized that we could capitalize on that with providing education to everyone and knowing how caring everyone is. We could help them care more and understand more for our children with life-threatening food allergies. And finally, we decided we needed to go beyond policy and procedures. Again, we have all the policies and procedures in place in School District 25, but we found that we were almost using them as a defense mechanism. When someone was asking to have a conversation about a child with food allergies, we would find ourselves responding by saying, well, we've got all the policies in place, procedures are in place, everything's in place, and we almost were becoming closed to just opening up and listening and thinking about what else we could do. We, of course, decided safety first, but we didn't want to put people second. We didn't want to just put policy and procedure up front. We wanted to put people up front. And again, we agreed what it's really about: kids' safety, caring for kids, including others, not shying away, and that if we open the conversation together, we're stronger. So we looked about what's happening throughout our district and learned some of these things, as you would see in many, many school districts. Our PTA is very active and wonderful in our school district. Food has grown to be a central theme of some of the events that they sponsor for us. And they spoke up and said, we want to help be a part of the solution. How else can we continue to advocate for children, provide extra resources for kids in our school district without putting any kids in an uncomfortable or dangerous situation? We realized that for children, talking about caring for others with food allergies comes easier than it does for adults. For our students, it was easy. We said, be a pal, be friends to take care of your friends who have food allergies. And they instantly said, of course, we want to do that. Adults needed a little more facts and figures and convincing to change the ways that we had been behaving. We also learned that as we shared information with people, when they knew more, they were more willing to help. When we got the facts and figures out there to them, they said, wow, I didn't know. What can I do to help all kids? So throughout our districts, we've done a few things so far. We've changed our language from being peanut-free to being allergy-aware. We've changed some snack rules at schools, again, to being fruits and vegetables in their own skin as much as we can. We've changed having food as the focal theme at our Valentine's and holiday parties, and instead changed that focus of a theme to celebrating together, doing games and crafts and activities together, and enjoying time together. We've read books to our kids and just raised their awareness. It's really important to point out that the key champions that exist in a school district for families who have children with food allergies are our school nurses. We have a full-time nurse in each of our schools. We know that parents with children with food allergies need at least one champion here, and that go-to should be your school nurse. Again, our communication is the key. Our nurses can navigate the medical world and the school world. They know the rules in each of those and how to use them to complement each system. They can implement a doctor's orders, and they can figure out what flexibility is needed within a school's procedures to make sure that all children are safe and are comfortable. They do express that the importance of a diagnosis and understanding and communicating with them. Does a child have an aversion versus an allergy versus a dietary need? We asked our school nurses some advice they might give families or other schools that are trying to work at making children with food allergies safe and comfortable. And they suggested, please have a plan or a team together before school starts. Start with the nurse. Reach out to the school nurse or the principal, assistant principal. Ask the nurse who else needs to be on this team with us. They ask parents to remember to keep track of expiration dates on medications, to teach their children early on to recognize the signs of when they may be having a reaction to an allergy. They remind parents to work within the research. Don't trust everything you hear, but to work with the experts in the field to make sure you have the facts and figures. And to remember that school nurses must abide by the HIPAA law, the privacy law in the medical field, and the FERPA law, the law for a free education for children and for keeping their privacy rights in place as well. They ask parents to provide as much medical information as possible in addition to the allergy plan. How significant is the allergy medically? How have families treated their children in different scenarios? Also, if a child has asthma, make the nurses aware of the asthma treatment plan in connection with their allergies. Share thoughts on what might work best in terms of lunch and a snack. Parents know their children best. Share with our nurses and with our staff what has worked in your home with your child. And ask our nurses for their thoughts and information to share with your doctors. Sign a consent so that our nurses can speak with your child's physician so they can put a plan together that best meets the child's needs. So I'm going to turn it over now to Eric, our principal, to talk with you about, as we looked at things from a district perspective, how he's taken this to apply it at the school building level.
Hi everyone, as Lori said, my name is Eric and I am the principal at Patton, which serves about 440 to 450 kids, all kindergarten through 5th grade. And there's contact information up there if you're interested in reaching out. Just a little bit about me. I'm actually speaking from the perspective of both a school leader, but also through the lens of a food allergic parent, as my son in the picture, Eric Jr., he's allergic to peanuts, dairy, egg, and soy. And so like many of you possibly listening in, you've navigated food allergies and had to work with family members on educating them to maintain a safe environment when we visit their homes. We've all kind of experienced that together. We discovered Eric's allergies when he was 10 months old. Unfortunately, we have had to administer an EpiPen on him, so we have gone through that painful process. But he came out okay in the end, and he's just a happy, healthy boy, and has got a sister, Annika, who's his biggest cheerleader, and then my wife, Cody, who is our, she's the best. All right. So just a little bit about Patton, just so you know. In the past few years, we've made some changes in our practices within our parent organizations, and excuse me, I just lost my spot. We're trying to maintain a safe environment for our food allergic friends, but also to promote healthy choices and to develop a sense of empathy and inclusiveness. And over the course of my portion of the presentation, I want to walk you through the steps and decisions we've made. And hopefully, as a parent, nurse, or educator, you can take something back to your school and make a positive difference as well. So this is my staff. This is our Halloween picture, and it's a funny picture, but it's important because one of the keys to having successful changes in a building is to have an open-minded staff, and these individuals play a significant role in some of our earlier decisions that helped move us into some of the more nitty-gritty details that can sometimes be challenging to get through. So we're going to start with the snack rule. I was originally from the middle school, and in the middle school, snacks really weren't a feature, but snacks are a feature within the elementary students' day. And the idea being that students would have a set time to eat a snack during their day to help provide them with some additional energy. And we know that some students don't eat very much for breakfast, and at times the mid-morning snack is what fuels them until lunch. Snacks are a big deal, as they are something that has been rooted in the history of the school and the district. But the problem is that the snacks in the building had gotten just a little bit out of control. And snacks had taken on somewhat of a life of their own. So in my first couple of days when I started with the Patton staff, they asked me what the rule was going to be for snacks this year. And as a principal, I was thinking about a lot of things going into those first few days, but snacks really wasn't one of them. So I asked the teachers what the rules had been and what they wanted them to be, and the feedback was that it was frustrating when parents sent in chips or cookies because that wasn't healthy. and that each classroom was left to their own devices to make determinations. And they also shared that if they had a classroom that had food restrictions because of a possible food allergy within the classroom, the non-allergic parents were not always understanding. So the message back to me was consistent in that they wanted there to be clearly defined rules that didn't lead to misinterpretation. Having everyone on the same page across the building makes things easier for everyone. So we agreed to fruits and vegetables in their own skin as a snack. And another way to say that is picked or peeled fruits or vegetables. This solved 3 problems. Students would now be eating healthier if they chose to have a snack. It created a safer environment for students with food allergies, and it allowed us to be consistent across the school so no one was getting a mixed message. Teachers agreed to enforce it in the classroom, and I agreed to take the heat when parents got upset about it. Anytime there's a wholesale change, anytime a wholesale change is made, you tend to get more negative feedback than positive. And while 6 to 10 parents voiced their frustration, I also had parents who thanked us for making the change. And after about 2 weeks, the issue was no longer an issue, and we had been moving in that direction. And we will be beginning our 3rd year. So changing the snack rule was really the beginning of what became a ripple effect of smaller changes that over time had a big impact. The Patton PTA, the Parent Teacher Association, is a very involved organization within our school. The PTA and I have a really good relationship, and as a result of changing the snack rule, they naturally wanted to talk about the why. I didn't feel like they were challenging me necessarily in a negative way, but they wanted to have a better understanding of the rationale. And this cracked the door for some parent education about food allergies and has resulted in changes that have positively impacted our students. The PTA provides a variety of experiences for kids and families. The 2 big ones are movie nights for students and mini course offerings where outside businesses come in to expose our students to real-world activities. And it really is a fantastic experience. However, the PTA would always serve a snack. And they asked the nurse and I what would be safe options for all our kids in the building, and we all landed on Skinny Pop popcorn and water because that is safe for our entire population. One of the more exciting times, moving away from snacks, one of the more exciting times for us at Patton is how we've been able to incorporate and blend food allergic and non-allergic students at the allergy aware table. So those students do not need to eat alone. There are a lot of factors that were at play, which I'll explain, but first I want to paint a picture of what lunch typically looks like. Lunch at Patton, we have an allergy aware table. It is a table where parents can elect to have their food allergic child sit during the lunch hour. This table looks exactly the same as the other tables, but only the students whose parents have expressed they want their child to sit there are allowed to be at that table. So for perspective, Patton has 2 lunch shifts where half of the school eats from 12:10 to 12:40 and the other half eats from 12:40 to 1:10. 4 students are seated at the table during the first shift and 2 at the second. Unfortunately, the 2 who sit together at the second have been friends for years and have enjoyed eating with one another, and we have an amazing custodian who the kids call Mr. B, and he hangs out with them, and he takes them under their wing, and the kids love hanging with him, and he usually gives them special treatment, like releasing them to get outside for recess first. The ball really got rolling in December when a parent whose child sits at the allergy aware table contacted me and asked if there was a way her son could invite a friend to join him at the allergy aware table. Internally, I had a few reactions, one of which was, I love that idea. And the second thought was, how will we manage it and ensure that all the students are safe? So I asked her to share with me her vision for what that would look like. She shared with me that whatever was in place, she thought it should be easy to manage and not put undue burden on lunchroom supervisors. I was appreciative of that because monitoring each individual item that a child brought from home was going to be a challenge, and without ingredient labels, educated guesses didn't make me feel comfortable. The mom went on to ask, aren't all the hot lunches that are served by the district's food service program peanut-free? And I was pretty sure they were, but I still needed to look into it. I told her we'd look into that and the policies and procedures surrounding the allergy table. I spoke with Dr. Bein and our assistant superintendent for student services to see if there's any flexibility that could be explored if we could keep the students safe. So from there, my task was to collect information from other schools in the district to see if any other schools were making unique accommodations, and I tasked my school nurse with finding out about all of the ingredients that are used in all of the food that is provided by food services. And what we learned through our research is that nuts are not an ingredient that is used or is listed in any of the packaging of the food that is served. While some of our students had allergies to items other than nuts, that was the one food item that the food allergic parents were most concerned about. So from there, I invited in all of the parents of the children who sit at the allergy-aware table to have a discussion about the possibility of adding friends to that spot. And I shared with all of them that everyone had to be in complete agreement at the end of the meeting because the safety of all students was paramount. The other participants at the meeting were our school nurse. As Dr. Bein shared, that's an important player, and Dr. Bein also joined us for that. All the parents were very comfortable with the idea of being able to bring a friend, provided the friend at the table was eating a hot lunch provided by the district. This was very manageable from a lunch supervision standpoint, and we agreed we would all touch base in about a month to see how things were going. We also agreed that just how parents have their children tested to see if they have outgrown any allergies or allergens, that this would need to be reassessed at the beginning of the year, and everyone would still need to be in agreement of the plan. We've since had a follow-up meeting where we decided that the food allergic students could invite more than one friend as long as they abided by the same restrictions. So the more collaborative we as educators can be with parents, the more support we'll get from them. In the education world, while many appreciate what we do, the voices that we hear more often tend to be those who do not like something. Little emails and notes like this are inspirational, and if you're a food allergic parent who's appreciative of what your what your school is doing, let the school know. If you're a food allergic parent that is struggling with the school, I would encourage you to contact your school nurse, and as Dr. Bein said, she will be your best advocate. So what's next for Patton? The decisions that have been made so far have opened the door to other conversations that will positively impact the families of students that have food allergies as well as other medical conditions. Our food allergy parents are feeling empowered and supported, and together as a group they have respectfully voiced concerns that they have and have come up with ideas that they can help educate the community as well as raise some questions. They've raised some questions that required some reflection on the part of the school. Often when a child has a medical diagnosis, there can be a bit of anxiety leading up to the beginning of the school year, as you as a parent wait to find out who your child's teacher is and then try to figure out how you're going to scramble to meet with that teacher before the first day of school. This isn't just true for food allergic students. It's also true for families who have other serious medical conditions like diabetes. In hearing these concerns, we have decided that we're going to host, or we have hosted, transition meetings at the end of each of our school years. So this meeting will include the child's parents, an administrator, the school nurse, the current classroom teacher, and the teacher that the child will have in the future year. In a sense, the meeting is designed to be a handoff, where the future teacher can be made aware of the needs of the child and gain insights from the current teacher and the parents. Parents are able to ask their questions, and the goal of the meeting is to educate the future teacher and to put the parents' minds at ease over the summer. It also helps establish a relationship, which is really important in having a successful year. You might find that your child's school is open to this idea. Placement notifications tend to be somewhat sacred, and there can be a historical tradition of not releasing that information. An alternative to this would be to request an opportunity to meet with the school nurse and the administrator and a teacher representative for the next grade your child will be in. At the very least, this would allow you to understand how the grade levels are different so you have an understanding of what your child's future year might look like.
Now we're going to have our colleague, Ginny Hiltz, join in. Ginny has just accepted a new role as a principal in a neighboring district, and we're very excited for her and excited for them that she's bringing her expertise on working with families and children who have food allergies to that community as well. But Ginny can talk you through what her role was here in District 25.
Thanks, Lori. I am pleased to be here, and good afternoon, everyone. As Lori mentioned, and as Eric mentioned, I also am looking at the issue around food allergies for children in schools with an administrator hat as well as a parent hat. As you can see in the picture on the slide, my son Christopher was diagnosed with an allergy to egg at the age of about 9 months, and it was trying for us. Obviously, egg allergies can luckily be a bit more mild than some other types of allergies, but when your infant is in daycare as a working mom, it was definitely a struggle for me to understand what they were feeding him, how that was working, and understanding all the different variations of how an egg allergy can impact life, to the extent that I did actually ask Arlington Heights District to allow me to step back to part-time for a moment while we figured out the best care for him. So having had that experience like Eric and understanding the fear that comes from parents sending their child off to be cared for by other people, we want to be mindful of what we can do in schools to make that situation as easy for everyone as possible. While we were having this conversation in Arlington Heights, I asked Lori if I could join the Allergy Committee, and I did so in part because of my interest as a parent, but also because I worked at Windsor School, which is a school in Arlington Heights, and Windsor is a bit of a unique setting because it hosts 2 special education programs that service the district with about 50 students, as you heard in the introduction. And those are students with a variety of different disabilities, many of which have medical complications attached to them. So I'm going to talk a little bit through what that looks like at Windsor. Medical health is at the forefront for the staff and everyone at Windsor. We have several children there with seizure disorders. We have children on the autism spectrum, and many of these different disabilities come with food issues attached. And so there were definitely some competing needs at Windsor that were a little bit unique and specific, and I wanted to make sure we're heard in the conversation. Above all, what we didn't want to do at Windsor was make the parents of children with disabilities feel not heard or undervalued, as many children or many parents of children with food allergies have felt in the past. So we were really looking for a way to balance the different needs of the students with medical concerns that did impact the types and the amounts and the timing of the food that they were eating, with the students who had allergies who also needed recognition and safety at school. So I'd ask for those of you who are parents or nurses or staff in schools to really take a good look at the special education ramifications of any food allergy plans or changes that you're making. There are students who may be in schools with cognitive or communication-related disabilities, and that may impact their ability to be helpful to students with food allergies. That may impact their ability to understand the severity of what is going on with a student with a food allergy. And they may also themselves have double concern in that they may have a disability related to their cognition or communication and also have a food allergy. We did have a student come through Windsor who was autistic and nonverbal, and also had a fairly severe peanut allergy. And what we learned from him is that it really was about the circle of support at Windsor. We couldn't rely on the student to advocate for himself. We couldn't really rely on the students around him to be as aware, because he couldn't talk with them, he couldn't explain his situation. And so we really had to make sure that everybody understood and everybody was looking out for him. And as Lori mentioned earlier in the presentation, kids take to this much easier than adults do. And so our students really embraced the fact that this was a student who needed some extra help, and really tried to make sure that he was safe whenever possible in a caring way, and that we also obviously had to make sure we did some extra support and training with the staff that was servicing him. So really what we took away from this was that it is about educating the entire community. It's about peer education and making sure that our children understand that this is not something that can be taken lightly, and it's something that should be understood, and with small changes perhaps can keep more children safe. So finally, what we wanted to put out there as a thing to think about as we move through future generations of how we change schools based on the needs of our students is that we are always going to have students with special dietary needs. So for instance, we have a student at Windsor who needs to be on a ketogenic diet, which was new information to me, but is a diet that's often used with children with seizure disorders, and is very specific about the types of food, the amounts of food, and what point they can be eaten. And since then, we've had several more children come through Windsor with ketogenic diets, and sometimes that does require them to eat foods that may have maybe an allergen to another child. Unfortunately, these classes are very small at Windsor for some of these students with disabilities, and so it's difficult to kind of separate students, and you have to get really creative. There's other disabilities, other diseases like sickle cell that require students to have high protein diets, and for many students that includes things like peanuts in some way. And so it is definitely something that can be worked around, but is not something that can be sort of forgotten about in the discussion about changing practices with food in school. As well, we have several students come through Windsor who are autistic and have extreme food aversions. And that is sort of a two-point issue to consider. One is that as a role as an educator, we want to help students with autism or other disabilities who have extreme food aversions learn to accept and eat new food. So that means cooking in the classroom. That means exposing them to different things, which you wouldn't necessarily do in a typical general education classroom. It also means that they may only be willing to eat certain things at certain meals of the day or in certain situations. So for instance, we had a student who came through who literally would only eat peanut butter. And that was what he would eat for lunch, and if he didn't eat that, he wouldn't eat anything. And so we needed to figure out a way to support him while also not endangering other students in the classroom. So things like life skills and cooking come into play. Teaching students self-advocacy, so if they do have the cognitive capacity to advocate for themselves, saying what they need based on whatever disability or food allergy that they have is crucial to part of a plan for a district. So I'm going to hand it back over to Lori to talk a little bit more about the next steps for District 25.
Thank you. So our committee jumped onto the Allergy Awareness Week that occurred in May to continue our education of our community. So after doing lots of activities throughout the school year and just sharing information in all ways, we celebrated Allergy Awareness Week as an entire school district community, all wearing teal on a Teal Tuesday, doing activities during lunch and during class, sharing information with our families, and celebrating the fact that by being educated and by caring for each other, we can keep more kids safe and keep more kids comfortable about coming to school. The committee continues and is now interested on doing some village-wide education, reaching out to our Chamber of Commerce to talk with restaurants, and can we celebrate those restaurants that do provide allergy-aware menus? Can we educate beyond our school walls, knowing that our children are here for much of the day, but also a part of a wonderful community throughout the rest of their days and in the summer? We have, as a school district, we need to remember to be open to changes. Lucca's journey continues. There's still existing loopholes in our school system. Lucca will soon go to middle school, and the procedures and the way things occur in middle school are different than in elementary school, and we need to start thinking ahead to what else we can do as our children become middle schoolers and teenagers. We need to not be afraid to admit that there are loopholes in our system related to kids who have food allergies and the programs that we have in place, that we need to do more. We just need to be open to discussing those and to addressing those. Our committee agrees and our staff agrees this cannot be an ending point. This is only the beginning in our journey of continuing to grow and continuing to do more as much as we can for all kids. So how can you help? We would encourage you, if you're a school administrator, open your heart, open your mind. Of course you have safeties and procedures and policies in place. Depend on those, but also then work with the people around you to make sure that we're hearing the whole story and working for all kids. If you're a school staff member, please take the education that you receive seriously. And as we know that you care so much for the kids in your classrooms and the kids in your programs, get to know this part of their lives as well. There's also things you can do if you're a food allergic parent. Again, reaching out to the school nurse is number one. The school nurse, the school nurse, the school nurse is a fabulous person to be in contact with to help your child be safe and to help them have the greatest experience they can. District administrators, so even the superintendent who may not be right at the school level very often, open your heart, open your mind, listen to what your community is asking for. And state employees, if you don't have the procedures and policies in place, please look to FAIR and look to others who've done the research to make sure that we're doing all we can to keep kids safe. And here's the next steps you also can do. We encourage you to step back from fighting. If you're a parent or a school staff member and you feel like you're constantly battling over what to do for a child with food allergies, or the procedures or the policies or changes that you think should be in place, we ask you to take a step back, take a deep breath, and instead move forward by collaborating. We've been successful in Arlington Heights District 25 because we've taken on an attitude of collaborating. What can we do together? Not being afraid that we don't have all the answers, not being afraid to admit that we have some loopholes, but figuring out what we can do together with parents and with staff and with students to continue to grow. Of course, get safety in place first. Have those policies and procedures and emergency management plans in place, but then keep moving forward. Don't stop there. As a parent, please educate your child's friends and family. We've been so surprised by the number of people who've reached out saying, I didn't know my daughter's best friend had a severe allergy. I didn't know my niece and my relatives were struggling with this. They so want to help. Please let them in. And thank your school nurse. They do so much every day to keep our kids safe and to care for our children. Please take the time to thank them and let them know that you know how impactful they are on providing a great environment for your kids. And contact us. If there's anything we can do, you can reach us at sd25.org. Again, that's schooldistrict25.org. Reach out and you can find any of us on that website who are happy to share our journey with you as you look to create yours. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lori, Ginny, and Eric, for sharing your story and telling us all about your district's journey. We're so fortunate to have you here with us today. Throughout the presentation, we did get a couple questions, if you don't mind trying to give those an answer. The first one, I believe you touched on before when you were talking about perhaps some of the reasons that you decided against banning peanuts. I know you had formed an allergy committee, and there was different parents involved and, you know, different allergy needs, peanuts versus everything else. So we had a question come in that said, if you ban peanuts from schools, where do you draw the line for other food bans? Students are not only allergic to peanuts. So if you don't mind just kind of elaborating on, you know, your conclusion to come to the fact that you decided against a peanut ban, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. That statement's exactly true. Our allergy committee, made up mostly of parents who have children with food allergies, discovered that among that group, they had different opinions and beliefs about what we should do. Some who felt banning peanuts was the answer. Others who felt, no, my child needs to live in a world where peanuts exist, so that I'd rather help them learn how to live in that world. And others who said, this isn't just about peanuts. There are many food allergies and children who have life-threatening allergies to other food items just as much as peanuts. So we need to talk about all of those allergens. So together, that committee decided we cannot ever say that we could fully ban any allergen from school. We just can't prove that someone doesn't come in with something on their hands, or a substitute misses the information, or we just couldn't police it 100%. So we decided we're not going to move forward with banning items, but what we could do was educate our community and give them the facts and figures and help them have an understanding and therefore an empathy for our children who do have food allergies, and that together we could make it a safer and more comfortable place without trying to ban or police certain items.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We got another question. What Patton has done is wonderful. Is the district looking at making the policies implemented at Patton consistent district-wide?
Yeah, so good question. So Patton was willing to be a pilot school, and we have a little bit more time as they begin their second school year trying this to allow them to revisit with those families, make sure that they want to continue the same practices at lunch, as well as now that our second school year is about to begin, to get some feedback on how were the transition meetings at the end of the year, both from a parent perspective and a school staff perspective. And so as we kind of allow Patton to continue this for us, all of our principals are watching and interested, because we're all interested in helping kids enjoy their time at lunch with their classmates. It's heartbreaking to see a child sitting by themselves at lunch, and so we want to change that. So we'll continue to reflect on Patton's experience for a little bit longer, and then start to spread their procedures throughout our other schools as well.
Great answer. Thank you so much. Our next question from one of our viewers is, what did you do with the kids who had special diet needs in class with kids with food allergies? She says that she faces the same issue and is interested how it's been navigated on your end.
I can jump in on that. So we did a couple of things. We really had to look at each individual situation and each child and who might be impacted by that. We did some things, including changing the location of where children were eating. So, for instance, if a child who needed to have a snack at a certain time, or it needed to be a snack that would be potentially harmful to another student, we would invite them to have a great snack in the principal's office, or come on down and try to make it something special, maybe bring a friend who did not have the food allergy, and try to make it something special that we could work through with that child. It really was about the communication with the families and with the children, and trying to avoid making anyone feel uncomfortable for something that was out of their control. So instead, trying to make things special or fun for students in a way that they may appreciate that they get to do something a little bit different, but also still meeting their medical needs. When possible, our students in the special education programs are buddied up with a general education program. We tried to be thoughtful about who we buddied them up with and what would be sort of the least strain in terms of putting children in harm's way, and having teachers be focused on policing anything like that, if there were joint parties or things like that in the room. We also do some reverse integration, so students from the general ed classrooms come into the special education classrooms, and so we tried to include children with food allergies by making sure that maybe what was happening in the special education classroom, if it was cooking or something like that, was without food that they may be allergic to. The other part that we didn't mention throughout this is that Arlington Heights has a procedure where we notify parents 3 days or 2 or 3 days in advance of any time food might be used in the classroom for any reason. And so it was really inviting parents to give feedback on the actual ingredients that were sent home to be used with a couple of days warning, so that they could check out what would be safe for their child. And it was a lot of work, but in the end it makes sense for the specific needs of each child.
Great, thank you, Jenny. Those are some wonderful examples. I think we have time for one more question. One of our viewers asked, what have you found is most effective, the most effective way to educate other class parents?
I would say that that's been through the kids. Again, we probably pointed out a couple times in the best way that we could that working with the kids was super easy. All we had to say is, you have friends who need your help. Will you be a pal? Will you care for your friend? And they were super excited to do that. And then through that, they would go home. Mom, Dad, I want to help my friend. Please pack me a different lunch, or we're going to go to this activity together. Can we make sure there's not peanuts at that? So really the biggest bang for our buck was free, and that was in reminding kids that they want to care for their friends, and they spread the word. Of course, we back that up with ongoing communication, starting at the very beginning of the school year with our curriculum nights or open house nights, making sure we were mentioning to parents that this was a topic we were serious about and we wanted to do together. sending some information out throughout the year, and then culminating with some real celebrations during Allergy Aware Week. Communication will need to continue to happen. We know this can't be a one-time deal, but we feel that we've put the foundation in place, and we can continue to build on that.
Wonderful. Thank you, Lori. At this time, I'd like to once again give thanks to Lori, Ginny, and Eric for joining us today and providing some really excellent insights about how their district took a team approach and came to some great solutions for their students with food allergies and entire student population as a whole. I'd also like to give a special thanks once again to Enjoy Life Foods, Skeeter Nut Free, and Vermont Nut Free Chocolates for supporting our Back to School Safely campaign efforts and making today's webinar possible. As a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and will be made available with all of our webinar archives. So if you're looking for more great back to school presentations, you can find them there. More back to school resources are also available at foodallergy.org, and the links that are listed on this slide. In particular, in the second link above, you'll find information on FAIR's Education Network, which houses a training program and a presentation for schools called Food Allergies, Keeping Students Safe and Included. It's designed to help school staff and administrators learn how to effectively manage students with food allergies and respond to food allergy emergencies. This and all of FAIR's resources can be downloaded by parents, school nurses, teachers, and any other health and safety advocates to help educate schools and the entire community about how to help students with food allergies stay safe, supported, and included at school. Again, thank you all for joining us today, and we hope to see you again at our next live webinar broadcast.